Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it was lovely to watch some of those videos. I really appreciate that you're doing this conference. So that was the introduction about me. Was a lot, and that can be overwhelming, the topic of chemicals and health. But the truth is that the more you understand what's going on and how chemicals influence your health, the more you can be proactive about taking care of your health. So that's what I want to talk with you about, and that's what is the purpose of my book as well. I also want to talk briefly about just myself and how did I get here. So I worked in greening products and in environmental, in the world of sort of the environment and greening our world from sort of the way that industry operates to the way that we operate. And I did that as an attorney and then as a consultant and as an entrepreneur. So I did this from all different angles. So I had a lot of knowledge about sort of the theoretical knowledge about how environmental pollution and exposures influence our health. But that was really quite academic until I started experiencing health problems myself. And it was that experience that caused me to write my book and to really dig into a level of research that I would never have otherwise done. And just to tell you a little bit about the type of health issues I had, just so that you start to understand sort of what I'm talking about. So I had everything. I started over time, started developing very small things. I had some sort of mild anemia. I needed to sleep more. I became more sensitive to caffeine and alcohol. At some point, I started having bloating and digestive issues, and my metabolism seemed to slow down, and I gained weight. Then there was a period of time in which I just kind of got the flu, and it wouldn't go away, and it kept coming back. And it wasn't until 3 years ago when I developed diabetic-like symptoms, and I had inflammation in the joints of my hand, and I actually developed active sensitivity to chemicals and to fragrance, that it really hit me that here I am working in this field of toxic chemicals and consumer products and eliminating them. And I am actually experiencing the symptoms that I know are caused by toxic chemical exposure, but it really took a while. I mean, it hit me because our world is sort of set up to tell us that, it's our genes, it's our lifestyle, whatever that means. And, now we need to, we're eating too much meat, or we're doing this and that. And some of that might be true. And in cases it is true, just based on how chemicals get around. And I'll get a little bit into that. But I think there's a bigger picture that we need to understand, is that environmental pollution is a strong influencer on our health, and that we can reduce exposure and we can really improve our health and wellness that way. And that no disease, no matter what it is, whether it's acute or chronic, whether it's very serious or mild, no disease lives in isolation. And that factor of environmental pollution is becoming an increasingly stronger factor in how we do. And there are definitely things that we can do for ourselves to reduce exposures and boost our health. So with that, I'm going to pop open a PowerPoint presentation that I prepared so that we have something to look at together. Okay, so my website, sensitivecanary.com or joannamoore.com, both are fine. And I'm going to talk to you today about 4 major topics. One is chemicals that you need to know about, things that I would like you to know about so you can understand how to avoid them, where they are and how to avoid them, how they cause chronic illness. I really would like you to understand that connection, that chronic illness doesn't just come from anywhere. There are factors that exacerbate that, make that much more likely in our bodies. How to detoxify and improve your health. I have a lot of personal experience on that. And then I just want to top it off briefly with how to get positive change within industry, because this is something that all of us in our personal and professional lives can have an influence, even if it's just taking small baby steps and influencing our actions and the thoughts and actions of others and things like that. And off to the side there is what my book looks like if you're interested in that. Okay, so toxic chemicals, I'm going to focus on products because most of the chemicals that are being generated are for some products that we're using, even though some of them are just kind of ending up in industrial waste. But just knowing, I want you to focus on the products because that's what you're interacting with in the world, and what products you buy is going to influence what industry produces. And there are 4 big categories in our time that are really important for us to understand together. So the first one is pesticides, and I know that there's other speakers talking about pesticides. So there's certain things that I want to talk to you about that might be a little bit different. First, I want you to understand what do I mean by pesticides and what do other people mean by pesticides? Because usually people think of that, oh yeah, pesticides on crops, right? But let's talk about all the categories out there. Okay, there are insecticides. These are products, ranging from things you might put on your body because you want to keep bugs and mosquitoes and ticks away, to flea medication. You might have children who have lice in their hair. You're putting that on their body. Those are insecticides. And then there's things you might be putting on your home or someone might have put on a building that you're in, such as termite insecticide or something to get rid of cockroaches or anything like that. So just to broaden your perspective of what that means. Fungicides, these are used a lot on food, but it might be antifungal medications. So I really want you to think very broadly about pesticides and products like that are basically designed to kill critters and other life forms, whether they're on your body, they're in your home, they're on your food, they're in the water. Herbicides, glyphosate, very common one that's been in the news, but people use those things at home as well. Things you might put on your grass, something that your neighbors might use. They're also used in forests and forest management. Then there's disinfectants, which have become very popular recently, right, with the pandemic. And so, I'm talking about anything you might put on your hands, you might spray a surface, that sort of thing. And then generally, these are chemicals that are designed to kill life. So I just want you to soak that in. And I'm not talking about things such as, I'm going to exclude things such as rubbing alcohol that you might put on your hand, or soap that you're using to mechanically wash your hands of germs. I'm talking about these are synthetic chemicals that were produced by industry. They were invented during World War II for the purposes of biochemical warfare, and then applied to non-wartime economy. So let's find a use for these. Why not put them, use them to kill off things we don't want. There are alternatives to these products, and for each one there's an alternative. So just open your mind. If you've got something at your home that you're realizing, what, this is some chemical cocktail, I don't know what it is, that kills off something, get on Google, go ask people, go ask around what the alternatives are. So what I want you to do is reduce your exposure and use of these chemicals. And I'll talk a little bit later about how that'll be helpful. There's also a misnomer that these are chemicals that we need. There's a lot of marketing and PR by industry that, we need these chemicals in order to grow our food. Farmers are dependent on them. Well, there's some truth to this, but the truth is not that, farmers are dependent on them because they need them in order to produce food. They're dependent on them because of the economies, the way that the chemical companies sell their products and make farmers dependent on that product. So that has nothing to do with the realities of the options out there in the world and how well they work. It has everything to do with the industry and how it manipulates the market, okay? The next class of chemicals are PFAS, or forever chemicals. We're hearing about these a lot as well. They're used to waterproof clothes and shoes and furniture. They're flame-proof, so they're used for firefighting. All the fires that we're having on the West Coast and such, we're still using PFAS. There's plans to transition out of them, but we're still using PFAS for the foreseeable future. Non-stick pans like Teflon, that type of stuff. It's also used in food packaging. That's been in the news, and we are sort of waking up to getting rid of these chemicals, but it's going to take a very long time. And even once we get rid of them from products, it's going to take a very long time before they get out of our water supplies, before they get out of our environment, because they are very long-lived. That's another problem with some of these chemicals that I'm talking to you about, is that they're very, very, very long-lived in the environment and in our bodies. Okay, so with PFAS, the best advice that I can give you is to get a high-quality water filter that's going to filter PFAS out of your water. PFAS are known to foam, so if you see, foam in your waterways, or foam, any kind of strange, slightly foaming water in your drinking water, I would say, be proactive, filter your water. Might not be the best place that you want to swim if you see that type of foam. And that picture right there is foam in Michigan. That's PFAS contamination. Okay, another huge chemical is sort of class is what's known as fragrance, synthetic fragrance. When you just see that ingredient, fragrance in products, that is a synthetic cocktail of chemicals. It can be dozens to actually hundreds of chemicals. There's persistent chemicals that are added in there to make the fragrance last longer. So if you see marketing about long, fresh scent, lasts long in your clothes, your room will smell fresh, for a very long time. Buyer beware. That means those are very persistent chemicals, and the more persistent chemicals are, the more long-lived they are in your body, and the more problematic they are. Surveys suggest that up to 25% of the population, possibly more, are no longer tolerant of these chemicals. Meaning that they're actively noticing that they're getting headaches, that they're not feeling well after exposure. And this can be anything from fragrance laundry detergent to air freshener to cleaning products to even things in your shampoo. So look for simpler solutions, even if it just means opening the window. But look for non-fragranced products and simpler solutions. If you want to go the more natural fragrance route, that's fine. Some people don't even tolerate that for various reasons. But anything that's synthetic fragrance, I would, especially if it's long-lived, stay away from. And the problem is too that if you use these fragrance products for a long time, you don't smell it anymore. They're actually designed so that you don't smell them, so that you'll want more of them in order to get that scent. And people who don't use these products, they can smell them even if you can't. And usually they smell them and they're having a negative reaction. Okay. Then there's plastics. They are off-gassing all the time. They leach into our food, if you're using plastic as storage. They mimic hormones, which we'll talk about a little bit later. They're toxic, but they're also very attractive to our biology, which is not a good combination. And they don't break down. They just break down into these microplastics, and they contaminate everything. They have now been found in the human lungs. They've been found in the human placenta. So they really get around. So if you can reduce your use of plastics, move over to glass, stainless steel, get those canvas bags and use them, that will be a benefit to you. And also I will mention that there are a lot of clothes made out of synthetic fabrics, which are essentially plastics. So if you can migrate your way toward natural fabrics, I would recommend that. So these are recommendations from me about that. You take them as you will and what makes sense for you. Okay, I want to talk about how toxic chemicals cause chronic illness. I really think it's important to understand this, that connection, to get that in your head, because it'll help you understand how to, how to kind of look at some of the symptoms or problems that you might yourself be having. So neurotoxicity is toxicity to the nerves of your body. And You think of sort of the nerves as the sort of that electrical connection in your body, but they're also regulating when your muscles move or don't move, whether they spasm, they relax. It regulates your brain function, whether you feel calm or tense. And we do have a lot of chemicals that are toxic to the nervous system, especially in that class of pesticides, which, everything from insecticides to biocides and things like that. I have people who've written in to me that said, I started eating organic, or I moved to food that was not sprayed with pesticides, and my symptoms of Parkinson's disease significantly reduced. Okay, so what they're experiencing is with diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, if you have something where you've got some slurred speech going, some weakness, some coordination issues, it might behoove you to look into, just kind of audit what you're putting in, on, around your body that might be neurotoxic. Anything in that pesticides class is really, really big. But also I would look at the fragrance, those kind of fragrance categories, because of that cocktail of chemicals in there. But in general, cleaning up your environment is, chances are, is going to help you. It certainly did help me. Okay, then we've got immune system disorders. So this is something that, is a big thing that people don't really, it's not recognized. It's not taught, unfortunately, to doctors, but there's research out there. And there's tons of research on this about how toxic chemicals undermine our immune system. And they do this in several ways. So one way is they weaken our immune system, and they actually can have certain attributes to them that help activate germs and bacteria. Like they actually activate them, because if you think about our ambient environment, it's full of germs and mold and bacteria and everything else. But they're just sort of dormant, and they stay dormant until something causes them to activate and, leads to infection. Same thing in our bodies, like we're full of germs, right? Our whole intestines are just tons of bacteria and viruses and things. So, but they're just kind of in this neutral state. Chemicals can both activate these germs in a bad way, but they can also weaken our immune system so that we're not able to maintain a homeostasis. And so things can seep in. Like right now, we're just at, hopefully, knock on wood, the tail end of a pandemic, right? And unfortunately, the people who, scientists are finding the people who have higher exposures to toxic chemicals are having a harder time with COVID. And that makes sense based on all the research we've done in the past on how toxic chemicals weaken our immune system. People also developed allergies to substances that the body perceives as being toxic because it's been so bombarded with toxic substances, things that truly are toxic. So you might live in an area with really bad air pollution and then develop allergies, seasonal allergies. And it's because your body's just sort of, freaked out, and it's sort of seeing that sometimes the molecules that are in the air pollution are similar to the molecules that are, coming off the trees, or the body just perceives them as being similar and starts to have an allergic reaction. So our bodies just don't like these foreign substances. These are sort of, we have created just hundreds and thousands of chemicals, hundreds of thousands of chemicals that did not exist in nature. And so we've synthetically made them and introduced them into our environment in a very short period of time. In less than 100 years, we've been exposed to so many chemicals. And our bodies are just overwhelmed. They're trying to understand what to do with these chemicals, what they are, how to eliminate them. And that in itself is a burden on our immune system and the entire function of our bodies. Then I want to mention autoimmune disorders, because they are also really growing. This can be anything from fibromyalgia and lupus to joint inflammation, any kind of problems with the immune system, where it's the sort of the common lingo is that the immune system is attacking itself. But if you look a little bit deeper in, generally the immune system tends not to attack itself. It's trying to attack something else that has lodged itself in your body that's hard to get rid of. And one giant culprit of that are what are known as persistent bioaccumulative and toxic chemicals. So these are persistent chemicals that do not break down easily, that lodge themselves in our bodies. So they can lodge themselves in the muscles and within the cells, within receptors, different receptors and hormone receptors, for example, things that the body does, but also in our bones, in our joints. And as we sort of keep accumulating these chemicals, we're exposed to them over time, at some point the body just is unhappy, it doesn't like them, those chemicals don't belong there, they might be interfering with some process. And so the immune system tries to pull them out, but they're sticky, they're hard to get rid of, there's a lot of inflammation. And so what we're experiencing are autoimmune symptoms. So all that inflammation and that pain that we're experiencing is part of our immune system trying to deal with everything. So it's going to behoove us to reduce, again, exposure as much as possible, and also to work on detox. And I'll talk a little bit about detox later, also from that personal experience. Okay, hormone disruptors. So most people think of hormones as the sexual hormones, right? But hormones really are a much broader system within our body. And basically what they do is they regulate our homeostasis. They regulate whether our temperature, they regulate our energy, they regulate our sort of how the liquid moves within our body, how how we take in sugar. So for example, insulin is a hormone. So it's not just estrogen or testosterone. There's tons of different hormones, and they're doing almost everything in our body. There's organs in the brain involved, the liver, the reproductive organs as well, the kidneys, and everything's kind of involved, so that our body's functioning all the time and kind of maintaining homeostasis. And that's our endocrine system, also known as our sort of hormone system. And a lot of chemicals disrupt that function. They might sort of lock into receptors, or they might sort of displace something that's going on, or they just might get in the way. And as a result, things might not work very well. Like for me, I developed suddenly, I kind of had chronic low blood sugar issues for some years. But after a series of some significant chemical exposures, I just had total diabetic symptoms for months and months. And I did not go the conventional route and take medication. And in part because when I called my doctor, they wanted me to wait 9 weeks to come in. So instead I went and did an unconventional route. I took herbs instead, and I detoxed. And at least for me, with my experience, I was able to recover, and I'm actually able to even put sugar in, a cup of tea or have a little bit of sugar and be fine, where before I couldn't eat a dried piece of fruit without going catatonic. So I say that to demonstrate to you that something like diabetes is not just sort of comes out of the blue and is mysterious in your body, or is sort of hereditary and cannot be reversed or managed or minimized in other ways. And for me, from the people that I've talked to, the research on myself, and the research I've done in writing my book, is the finding that by reducing our chemical load, our body starts to heal, it starts to work better. And the fact that chemicals are known hormone disruptors, we have tons of science on this going back decades, is an important piece of information for our health. Okay, I'm going to talk also about arrested development. So we think of birth defects as these sort of obvious things, right? These, it's visible. There's a child who's not, not able to think normally, or or sort of perform in school, or they might have some, some sort of physical defect. But we are actually seeing a lot more invisible birth defects. There are cases, for example, of both men and women, and also this goes back to animals. Also, we have cases of this in animals in the wild from exposure to toxic chemicals, whether it's pharmaceuticals that are now banned, known to be toxic, or from exposure to toxic chemicals that are out there in the environment. We have these invisible birth defects, such as malformations in the reproductive organs. Very hard to see for women. The internal organs, for example, of women are very hard to see. But you do a CAT scan or something, and then you hear back that there's things don't look normal. For men, same thing. We definitely, unfortunately, we've known for decades in men that the average penis size has decreased. The distance between the genitals and the anal area have decreased. So these are all very subtle changes that are malformations that are practically invisible in terms of what we understand to be a birth defect and what society understands to be a birth defect. But scientists have known about these for decades. It's just that the information, as I discuss in my book, is not getting out into the public. Okay, so I'm telling you this because if you are pregnant, wanting to get pregnant, you have a baby, you have a young child, now is the time to take charge of this and reduce exposure, clean up what you're putting in, on, and around your body. And it's really going to behoove you in just the growth and development of your baby. Neurodevelopmental disorders, so ADD, ADHD, autism, same thing, linked to hormone disrupting chemicals. And then disturbances in sexual development, I kind of mentioned that. But these are all things that have been tied to chemicals. Okay, I want to talk about chemical congestion because this is something that really came through in my research, and that's with these persistent bioaccumulative and toxic chemicals. So these chemicals designed to be long-lived, long-lasting. The PFAS, the strong stuff in fragrance meant to make it long-lived and long-lasting. We also have a legacy of chemicals from decades past that are in the environment that are long-lived. And what they do is they do lodge in those organs and tissues. And so our bodies get congested. First of all, in every moment, every time you take a breath, every day, every week, our body is constantly taking in nutrients, putting them into the organs, tissues, and cells of our body, and creating energy out of that. And it's constantly generating waste. So all of our cells are generating waste. It's just like we're mini, each aspect within us, each fragment within us is like a mini organism. Like we, as a human being or, as an animal, we eat, we poop, we pee, we generate waste, right? And our cells and every little aspect, even on a smaller scale of our body is doing that. And when our body is congested with toxic chemicals, it's harder for that process to happen. It's harder for all the nutrients to go in effectively and efficiently. It's harder for the waste to go out. So the end result, again, is that we're not functioning very well. We just might, our face might be swollen, we might feel bloated, we might feel slower, you might not have enough energy, we might be having an autoimmune response. These are all because of our body is just not able to function sort of normally and efficiently as it would without the presence of these chemicals. So again, I'll go into it a little bit more, but the solution to this is to get these chemicals out and eliminate them from our bodies and our environment. And that will help boost our natural innate ability to heal and for our bodies to function properly. Okay. So the last aspect I want to talk about in terms of how chemicals affect our health is the silent winter concept. And this is what my book is called, Silent Winter. And this is where it all started for me. So at some point, at least for maybe 20% or more of the population or more people, when we are exposed to toxic chemicals and overwhelmed, at some point our body will just shut down. It'll become overwhelmed. We will develop flu-like symptoms. We will just want to sleep all the time. We won't have enough energy. We might develop also an intense sensitivity to other substances, chemicals, alcohol, caffeine, all the fragrance and all those chemicals. Our body becomes overwhelmed and says no more. Okay, so this is a self-protective mechanism, but unfortunately, our body's not producing enough energy to kind of have a normal life. The waste products are not getting out. The cells are shut down. Nutrients cannot get in. So usually, people stuck in this sort of, I'm going to call it a chronic fatigue state, tend to get worse because things are just not functioning. The body's kind of just closed down. I've been in that state. People with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, with lupus, with chemical sensitivity, they all experience this state. But I know people who have experienced this for just shorter periods of time. I had a friend who told me that her husband was exposed to some chemicals at work, and then suddenly he was so fatigued for a week he couldn't get out of bed. So that's her body's self-defense mechanism to, whoa, I am overwhelmed. Okay. And for some people, it might be a week. For some people, it might last 6 months. For some people, it might last some years, depending on what chemicals are in their body and what they're doing to backtrack away from that. Okay. So given all that, I want to move over to, how do you detoxify your body? How do you improve your health? So I'm going to spend a bunch of time here because this is, after all, a health conference, and I know the information I'm telling you is quite overwhelming. So let's spend some time on how do we take charge, regain our power and deal with this. But before I do this, I might just want to mention a few things because I bet, there's a number of people sitting here wondering, well, don't we have an EPA? Don't we have regulatory agencies? Don't we have all this review? And I hear that we have the government sort of recalling products, or companies are recalling products, and they're saying they're doing sustainable things. And how is it that we have chemicals in our environment and our products that are not healthy for us, and nothing's being done about it? I talk quite a bit about that in my book. I wanted to give a section in my book for that topic so that before I went into the health stuff, people understood where we're coming from. But basically, we have some real challenges with respect to, how government and industry is operating, and unfortunately, they're not really protecting us. So they're not able to do that. There's our economy is set up in such a way that money talks. People need to pay the bills, and that sets up a lot of bad incentives in terms of the way people behave. And unfortunately, the government is, they're not protecting us. They're relying a lot on industry. They're conceding a lot to industry, generally, unless industry agrees to be regulated. Government will not regulate industry. So we have the situation where they're bedmates, and we are all human beings. And if you think about how difficult it is for any of us to make a major change in our lives, the fear involved, the reservations, the concerns about money, the concerns about whether we can do it, whether it'll work, the draw to do the cheapest thing, to buy low, sell high, all those things that affect us as human beings, those vulnerabilities and weaknesses, just compound those to industry, to companies, to government. And lo and behold, you have our reality is a very imperfect world with a lot of issues, and a lot of us are basically left to take care of ourselves. And that's what we need to do. Okay. So I've been talking a lot about eliminating and reducing exposure to toxic chemicals, but what does that mean? And so I really want to spend some time on here, and I will tell you a little bit about some of the things I've done and how they've worked for me as well. But why do it? So you want to lower the burden. You want to lower the synthetic chemical burden on your body. That's going to make it easier for your body to detoxify to begin with. So there's studies that show that even chemicals that if you were perfectly healthy and if you were ingesting some chemical in small amounts, and you would just pee it out in a few hours or in a few days, studies show that if you increase the dose of that chemical and then, add on to that all the other chemicals you're being exposed to, suddenly your body's in chemical overload. It cannot keep up in terms of detox. And it starts to put those chemicals away and hide them in your body because it can't eliminate them fast enough. So I don't know whether some of you might remember there was that I Love Lucy, that old show, I Love Lucy. And there was an episode where she went to work in a chocolate factory. And there's a chocolate coming down this conveyor belt. And her job is to take the chocolates and put them in the box, right? She's boxing the chocolates. That is her job. But then they speed up the conveyor belt and she can't keep up. She can't get the chocolates in the box. So she starts eating the chocolates, right? This is just, the comedy, the slapstick comedy of I Love Lucy. But it's a very similar concept to the way that chemicals work in your body, is that, if it's small amounts and the rate at which they're coming in is slow, your body deals with them just fine. But then you up the ante, the body's already congested, you increase the amounts coming in at a higher rate, and it's just overwhelmed. So it'll start very common for the body to start putting chemicals away in fat. And it's very common for the body also to start generating new fat cells so that it can store these waste products in there. So if you're trying to lose weight, one thing you can do is reduce exposure to toxic chemicals. Another thing that I want people to be very, very aware of in terms of fat and just reducing exposure is that all mammals do this. So in terms of chemicals coming in, bodies overwhelmed, first place they go is the fat. The fat are then used to produce milk. They're used to produce breast milk in women, and in other mammals. So, a lot of people say these days that, I'm intolerant of dairy. Okay, now that might be very true, but the real reason why you might actually be intolerant of dairy is because, unfortunately, it harbors a lot of toxic chemicals because milk comes from fat, from dairy fat. Fat is used to produce dairy, and that fat tends to harbor toxic chemicals because that's the first place that the body will put it away. Okay, so if there might be somebody I haven't checked. Plus, I probably get mixed up anyway. There's probably some speakers talking about be careful with dairy. And I would say that one of the reasons to be careful with dairy is because it does harbor toxic chemicals. That's where it all goes. I do eat some dairy, but very little. I think about the quality. I love cheese, so that's usually what I gravitate to when I eat dairy. I really look at the quality, but I think also about where those cows or sheep or whatever, where they're living. And is it a clean environment? Because it's not enough to say, I'm going to get organic milk. I mean, it's a start, great. If it's certified organic, or if it's from a farmer that does not use spray, at least you know that you're avoiding pesticides. But if the farm is next to, a factory, or was doused with firefighting foam in the fall because of forest fires, at least for the time being, those animals are likely harboring those toxic chemicals in their fat, and that's going to dairy production. Okay, so I just want you to understand that, because people kind of get really into this. Oh, I'm eating organic, so I don't have any problems. But you really have to go much deeper than that. Okay, I know I'm jumping around here, but I do want to just go back to the point of why eliminate and reduce toxic chemicals a little bit more. So your liver, your kidneys, you have certain organs in your body that are participating in the detox process, liver and kidneys, very much so. And they also, as with the rest of your body, they get burdened when a lot of stuff is coming in, right? So the more you can reduce that burden, the better those organs are working, not only to detoxify, but they're also working for you for the things that they normally do in your body. The liver is an amazing organ that I think there's probably over like 100 functions that it does for our body. Very critical. So treat those organs well and start by reducing and eliminating those synthetic chemicals in your life. I mentioned storage. So aside from fat, your body's not going to be able to store everything in fat. And in fact, the chemicals themselves have a propensity to bind to things, even the chemicals that historically have been sort of pawned off or described as inert. So a lot of people who, went to school, went to high school, college in the 50s, even 60s, possibly even 70s, they were told certain things such as forever chemicals, PFAS, the chemicals in Teflon, they are inert. And because they're inert, they therefore don't cause any trouble in your body. Well, that's been over and over disproved. So any chemical that is synthetic does have the potential to be active in your body or bind with something, catalyze reactions, or get in the way of them and cause problems. And that's certainly been true with PFAS, which were considered the most inert chemicals on the planet. And so they will bind to things. We have found chemicals in people's bones. We found chemicals in their bone marrow, in their teeth, in their brain, in their lungs, and their organs, within the cells. So nothing is off limits in your body to, I'll just say it forthright, contamination. And I think at this point, I do need to say that, don't freak out. The reality is that all of us, there's not a living human creature, including any human being on this planet, who does not have toxic chemicals in their muscles, in their tissues, in their bones. So don't freak out. It's just, that is our reality, right? You maybe just have to see it as there was a period in history where people would only have lifespans of 20, 30 years because, they would breathe in smoke from fires or ruin their lungs, or because they just would get sick and die, whatever it is. We have created a world and a lifestyle that has obviously extended our lifespan quite a bit. But we have issues that are causing chronic illness. And, for some people that's deadly. For other people, it's very painful and inconvenient. But it is our reality. So I want you to start with that sort of baseline of like, don't freak out about all this. We all know the Centers for Disease Control, who have done multiple studies, taking our blood samples and urine samples and, all that kind of stuff, know that we are chock full of toxic chemicals. That's just kind of our reality. But we can reduce that amount, and we certainly can change the trajectory upon which we're going, right, with this. So reducing is very, very important. So I want to go through and kind of go through with you an audit of what I did to reduce toxic chemicals, so that I'm being as sort of broad and comprehensive as I can by going back and thinking about what I did that helped me. So I got to the point where basically there I was, I woke up one day after some chemical exposures, and there was a time delay as well. These things can have a time lag of weeks, which they did for me. And I went and I made myself my daily cup of tea, and I tasted my tea, and it tasted like rotten meat to me. And I thought, what is wrong with this tea? And I threw it out. I started over, made myself another cup of tea. Same weird smell and taste. I tried a different tea completely. I went from black tea to green tea. same problem. Okay, something was wrong. I gave up on the tea. I had breakfast. 2 hours later, I was totally catatonic. I was exhausted. I had to lie down. My blood sugar was all over the place. I was both still full from breakfast and hungry, completely catatonic and exhausted. And on top of that, I noticed that my sense of smell had changed and my sense of taste had changed. I could suddenly smell the fragrance from my shampoo in the bathroom. I could smell the plastic of the plastic bags, and I could smell the chemicals used to bleach the toilet paper that I was using. Okay, so I was getting some pretty immediate feedback about chemicals right then and there. So that was a huge motivator for me to get rid of anything in my life that I could smell that was offensive to me. And that was going to be my gauge. So that was sort of my guiding star. And while it was an unfortunate thing to go through, it was also quite a benefit to me because right away I was getting feedback. This is your problem, right? And not everybody gets that feedback. Some people don't get that feedback at all, and they just keep going. And then, they wonder why they have cancer and blah, blah, blah. So you're just going to have to be open to what I have to say to you, that even if you're not smelling, you're not finding these things offensive, be open to the idea that reducing them in your life will actually improve your health. So the first thing I did was I tackled the plastics and the fragrance. I just took everything in my bathroom that smelled offensive to me. And for the time being, I put it in a box and I put it in the basement. I didn't throw it away because I knew it was going to be very hard for me to do, right? These were products that I had been using that I loved. I didn't know what alternatives were. And so that's something that I recommend for you, is just take baby steps. So all I did was I put them in the box and I put them away. And then I could look with what did I have left? What could I work with, right? With respect to with personal care products, you can Google, and there are a lot of alternatives, things that you can make at home, a lot of edible products, so you can moisturize your skin with olive oil, coconut oil. You can, I have been washing my hair with ground up herbs and water. It works very well. Some people use a diluted vinegar rinse. Some people use diluted baking soda, which I think is harsh, but there are a lot of very basic things you can do that are also economical. Because I know some of those products that are marketed as green can be very expensive. But the more you simplify your life, actually, it can get very cheap. So I used olive oil as moisturizer. You can use sunflower oil, coconut oil. You can brush your teeth with a pinch of baking soda and water. There are so many options out there, or there's so many products. You go to a natural food store, you go to a place like a natural grocers, or a Whole Foods, or look online, buy at a cost. There's so many options out there for greener products. Look for things that are fragrance free. Just reduce that stuff. Anything that suddenly, things that I mentioned, from the plastics, the fragrance, the PFAS, the pesticides, reduce that stuff. So that's what I did. I started out with fragrance. The next one was plastics for me. So that was another issue with a lot of products that I had in my bathroom, is that they were packaged in plastic. So I decided to go the natural route, supernatural route, and just make my own, buy things in glass. An issue for me was actually clothes. So I had synthetic materials that were used to make my underwear, my bras. I had synthetic shirts. The smell of them was repulsive to me. Suddenly, they smelled really repulsive. I had that feedback. A lot of people don't, but I did. And so I slowly started transitioning to natural materials. I love hemp. I love cotton. I love linen. I love wool. You can get them secondhand, or there's tons of sellers on Etsy. You can look around, you can go to any secondhand shop. Most stores will have these materials, but look at the tag and label, especially for things that are immediately on your body. And if there's something especially going on with you, if you something acute going on with you or something pretty strong, I would definitely go that route. Or, you might want to do that faster. That costs a little bit more money if you're changing your wardrobe very quickly, but I would recommend that to anybody, even slowly, just slowly start. If you're going to buy something, I'll look for the natural materials. Okay. And double check, because people will say cotton, but then, you look closely and it's really 20% recycled plastic. And your body just doesn't like that. I'm sorry. They might say that it's eco-friendly to use recycled plastic to make your sweatshirt, but your body's not going to like the chemicals in that. Okay, so that's the things I tackled. Now, I was already eating a lot of organic and no spray foods, but I could tell that it was not enough. And the things that I missed, I was not paying attention to, were meat, the dairy, things that aren't normally labeled organic. So I really had to look at that. And I was also eating sometimes prepared things, like a prepared salad dressing or whatever. And I started having to really look at things much more closely. So one thing, for example, is, if you're really having issues and you want to try to reduce them, is to look at the prepared foods that you're buying, and look at, is there anything that's natural flavor? Now, people think natural flavor is, they just put in some lemon juice or lemongrass in there. No. So the difference between synthetic artificial flavor and natural flavor is this. Both are synthetically made for the most part. Some people might have a different, might do something different, but for the most part, the legal definition is natural flavor is synthetically made, but they synthetically create a chemical that has been proven to exist in nature. And for some of us, and probably for a lot of us, our bodies do not like that. They definitely don't like the artificial flavor. You should just get rid of that right away. That's, even conventional doctors will tell you that at that point. But natural flavors, be very careful with, because they're not necessarily just some extract of lemongrass or ginger. It's actually a synthetic chemical that has been proven to be a chemical formulation that exists in nature. So look at those things, start reading ingredients on the foods that you eat. Look for no spray, start checking out farmers markets. Organic certification is great. It costs farmers a lot of money. A lot of small farmers cannot afford that, but a lot of farmers are interested in going, not using pesticides. So ask them what they're doing. Try to reduce that spray. You can grow things at home. You can even take, you can grab things like lentils, put them in a bowl of water overnight, and they will start to sprout. You can sprout your own stuff at home. You can do things to kind of control what you're eating and to expand your access to clean food that way. So that was very huge. Again, I mentioned I was not looking at meat. I was not looking at dairy until I really got sick. And I realized that, again, dairy, you really have to be very, very careful. Saying organic is not enough. You really have to think about the source. The way that I ended up working out things is I really paid attention to how my body was reacting. So if there's anything, my stomach didn't feel right, or anything the next day, I just didn't feel well, or that day, I would change it out, try something different. So sometimes I would try a local raw, supposed to be lovely local raw milk, and my body didn't like it. I was gaining weight, I was getting distended. So I stopped that, I moved to something else, and that helped, even that, though I would expect that milk to be clean. Meat the same way. I do end up, going for a lot of local farmers. Sometimes some of them my body doesn't like, others I do. This does mean that I have had to reduce my meat consumption, because that type of meat tends to be much more expensive than if you just go on the supermarket shelf and buy the sort of factory farm meat. So you have to start making some priorities in your life and figuring out where you can cut costs, where you can simplify. But it's worth the benefit. The benefits are worth it to eliminate and reduce exposure. Um, okay, so with the foods, packaging is another thing. A lot of things come in plastic packaging with foods. Start bringing your own, you shop bulk, start bringing your own packaging. Think about, if you have an option between something in a glass jar or a plastic jar, go for the glass. It will make a difference. I mean, anything you're doing to reduce that exposure, because all these chemicals, they're proved to leach into the food. So think about it that way. Those were the big ones for me. I mean, there's obvious stuff, anything that if you go somewhere and something smells chemical, stop right there, leave, put on the right mask. If you're painting in your house, I recommend wearing a vapor mask. So if you work with chemicals professionally, please, 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 do not get peer pressured into, oh, you don't need the safety equipment. No one's using it. If you're working with stuff that's either plastic dust or vapors or anything like that, please use appropriate equipment. You want to make sure your skin is covered. You want to make sure that your lungs are protected, your eyes are protected, all those things. That's a lot of people get into trouble. They develop chronic illnesses, occupational illnesses, and looking back, it's because they did not do the full safety precautions because, their colleagues weren't doing that. Okay, so very important that you take care of yourself. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about in terms of boosting your health are organic food grade vitamins and minerals. So I talked about that process of your body detoxifying, and I use that analogy of I love Lucy in the chocolate factory, and she's taking the chocolates off the conveyor belt and putting them in the box. Now, your body, your liver, your kidneys, and all aspects of your body, in order to run its detoxification factory, needs inputs. And those are the inputs that are going to take a toxic chemical and break it down until your body can eliminate it, whether it's through your lungs, through your sweat, through your urine, through your menstrual blood, whatever. I mean, anything that your body is excreting, any body fluid or whatnot, is a potential way for your body to get rid of toxic chemicals. But it needs inputs to do that, to break those chemicals down to a form that they can leave your body. And those inputs come from the nutrients in our food and from, the clean air we breathe and things like that. We are, because I mentioned before, it's already given that all of us deal with toxic chemicals in our lives. They're kind of omnipresent. We need a lot of these inputs, and we need more than what our food can provide at this point. We also have issues with our food. The nutrients in our food, our food is not as nutritious as it was in the past. You may have heard this before. I'm guessing a lot of you who are attending this conference might have heard stuff like this before. But also, even if our food was sort of maximizing our nutrition, we still need more because we just have so many synthetic chemicals to deal with in our lives. So I right away started taking vitamins and minerals 3 times a day. So things that they say take once daily, I was taking 3 times a day to give my body that support so that constantly it had enough to detox. And I didn't take it all at once because then I would pee out things that my body wasn't using right away. I just took it 3 times throughout the course of the day so that constantly my body could grab those inputs, all right, and start and detox. And that helped a lot too. I picked organic and I picked food grade because those vitamins and minerals are much more available. They're much more bioavailable to your body. That's my recommendation. If you can't afford that, start with what you can afford, but up your vitamin and mineral intake significantly and space it out throughout the day. My favorite brand, my choice is Garden of Life. They're organic food grade. I do the B complex, very important. I do the vitamin C. I do the multivitamin. I do the vitamin D. I do the calcium. I I have to do the iron personally, but a lot of people with chronic illness tend to be anemic. So, all of that is helpful for me and maybe helpful for you. So look at those things, test it out, see how it's working for you. While I'm on the topic of food and vitamins, this is a lovely picture there of nice, colorful food spectrum you should be eating. I hope you've already gleaned that from other people in this conference and will continue to do so, the importance of getting fresh and fruits and vegetables and diversity of those foods. But I also want to talk about water. Water is very important, clean water. As I mentioned, the biggest sort of pollutant of our day right now is PFAS, forever chemicals, and we already have initial water testing results around the country. There is a lot of contamination. I just highly suggest that you invest in a water filter that handles PFAS, and a lot don't. I've been relying on a refrigerator water filter, and that water filter does not handle PFAS. So I have invested in one that does. I find that to be very important, especially because those chemicals are very, very, very long-lived in the body. So water, very, very important to get clean water. I hope you're drinking water from filter. Just the chemicals used to treat the water, so that, and by the water utility are a lot for your body to handle. But then you're going to get pesticides in the water. You're going to get basically, we're at the point where like the medications that people take and are peeing out end up in our water supply, and the wastewater people are not capable. They don't have the capacity yet and are not filtering that stuff. So we end up drinking it. So highly, highly recommend that you filter your water. So food, water, and then and the soil obviously is part of that. But let me also mention air. I know a lot of people live in areas with air quality challenges. If I recommend just getting an air filter to deal with that. And I know that what I'm telling you, some of these things are adding up as expenses. However, if you think about the expenses of going to the doctor, of going to the hospital, of doing labs, of ending up going to specialists that don't take insurance, this is going to be a major investment in your health and just a fraction of the cost that you will experience if you get sick. And then you might not even be able to, make it to work to pay for those things. So some of these things sound expensive, but they're, the huge investments for me, I would say, are the vitamins, the water filter, the air filter. And if you, want to eat meat, dairy, those get expensive when they're super clean. So you probably want to reduce those. But then I do want to reiterate that there are a lot of things you can do to simplify your life. Buy less plastic stuff. Just put on some oil as moisturizer. Buy simple soap and use that. You don't need all these fancy products. Your skin is still going to look great. Your teeth are still going to look great. Whatever it is, your hair can still look great with very, very simple, natural, and cheap, very affordable solutions. Okay. And there's plenty of information out there on the internet, and I've given you some options for that as well. Okay. Another thing that I found extremely helpful for me is detoxing, doing extra things for detox with zeolite clay. And I use I'm going to say this right away, but I'm using a liquid formulation that has been cleaned. And for me, that's very important, because the issue that we're facing now is that because our environment is contaminated, the clays can be contaminated as well. And clay, the zeolite clay is technically a silicate. In any event, it comes from nature. It's very widely available out there. So this is not a scarce resource. It's very widely available out there, but it can be contaminated. So you want to look for a formulation that is actually cleaned. It's packaged in glass, and I found one. I will just say right away that my favorite brand is PBX Zeo. Touchstone Essentials. No one is paying me to say this. I'm just telling you that I've been taking this product for 10 months now, and it works, and I feel pretty good that it's a clean product. Now, why do I use it? It binds to the bad stuff, but not only does it bind to it, but it kind of puts it in this molecular cage. And what's important for me about that is that there are lots of things you can try to do to detox, but a lot of them, what they do is they take the bad substance, the toxic chemical, and they pull it out of some area of your body, such as your liver, and then it gets dumped into your bloodstream, or it gets dumped into your intestines, and it gets reabsorbed and repoisons you. Okay, so this is why a lot of people who start to take some herbs and stuff and for detox, they feel worse. Okay, it's probably not because you're having some sort of a Herxheimer reaction, blah blah. It's probably because you're repoisoning yourself by moving toxins out of one area of your body into another and then reabsorbing them. I mean, that is unfortunately the reality. So you can still do those things, but I would suggest do them very, very mildly, and take a lot of vitamins and take a lot of, eat a lot of foods with fiber to help absorb those things. You can also bring things to the next level, which for me was a big difference, is to use the zeolite clay. So what it does, it starts to pull things out. It's got it has priorities. So it loves mercury. So when I started taking it, right away, it started pulling mercury out from my gums and teeth, because I used to have a lot of mercury fillings and got them all taken out at once, which led to poisoning and led to those things settling in the tissue, the mercury. And I knew, because it has a tendency to make you feel like when it's pulling things out of an area of your body, you feel discomfort. You almost feel like, for that part and for some other things that happen, it was almost like somebody had been hitting me in that area. And there's a way to take ZO. I actually wrote a blog article about it. It's on my website, sensitivecanary.com or joannamoore.com. You can search for that. But you want to take it in the same way that you take the vitamins. We take smaller amounts throughout the course of the day. You don't, if you are having a lot of discomfort or symptoms, you actually want to take more of it, because what's happening is it's loosening things in your body and grabbing them and putting in molecular chains. But sometimes things are stuck to one another. So it might grab something and start and kind of put it in a cage and start moving toward elimination, but it loosened up a bunch of other stuff. And so you might sometimes need to take more zeolite, more vitamins. Some people take glutathione. This is a little bit advanced there, but I do talk about it in my article, to help take care of that other stuff that got loosened. And so slowly and surely you can help detox with zeolite clay. Again, I said that I've been on it for 10 months. I've definitely seen a lot of positive changes. Unfortunately for me, the pandemic has been difficult for me because of the amount of fragrance, cleaning products, and disinfectants that are being used around in grocery stores, on food. So that's been a higher burden that I've had to deal with, but I think that zeolite has also helped me sort of ride this time frame with that. And again, as I mentioned, PFAS is a real issue that I need to filter my water, and so those are things that the zeolite is helping with, but it's also helping with things that have been in the body for a very long time. Those toxic chemicals, again, they're displacing things in your body. So it's very well known, for example, that one of the chemicals that displaces calcium in bones is cadmium. That has been known for decades, and that's associated with smoking. So people who smoke chronically are more likely to develop osteoporosis or bone loss, because the cadmium that isn't in the cigarettes is displacing the bones. But this is a very common sort of thing that's happening with chemicals, is that they're displacing things in your body that should be there. And so in taking them out, you're giving your body more room to absorb and take in the nutrients that it needs, the minerals, the vitamins. And that is your road to healing. You want a body that's got everything that it needs in place and has the time and space to heal. Okay, so that's the zeolite clay. Another thing that I've been using that has really worked well for me is the infrared light therapy. These are anything from saunas to red light bulbs. You need to wear protective eyewear for that. They help detox your body, and they also help reduce inflammation. Martin Paul, who's also on this conference, has done a lot of research into that those benefits of saunas, especially for people with chronic fatigue type conditions, that the benefits of reducing inflammation as well as the detox. My choice, I use Platinum LED. That's a brand of a panel. They're not paying me to say this. I just happen to like it. I don't have it here in the room, but it's a panel about this big. I can get pretty close to it if I have an area that I want to work on, or I can be pretty far away if I want to work on a big chunk of my body. But if I can, I do it for short stints, 5 minutes every single day, and especially areas that are bothering me. And that helps a lot. Please do not do the thyroid gland. Please do not do the ovaries or the testes, but you can do any other area of your body. And there's a lot of information on the web about that as well. Grounding the body. So another thing that is very, very helpful. I know that probably some of these concepts are like, whoa, this is so far out for me. So our body is used to sort of our body is an organism, and this is, human beings, animals, everything is used to being in contact with the earth. The earth has an electromagnetic field that sort of offsets the electromagnetic fields coming from the sky, from the sun, from radiation from outer space. We also have introduced a lot of radiation into our world with cell phones, with Wi-Fi, with smart technologies, whatnot, even electricity. And having that connection to the ground is very important for our body to help our body sync in terms of that electromagnetic frequency that it considers to be normal and supportive of healing and good health. The way you can do that is to connect the soil. You just take off, when it's summer, the weather's warm, take off your shoes, walk around barefoot. You can touch trees and rocks with your hands. Even if you just do it for a few moments, your body in that instant, it's just a measured benefit to your nervous system, to your body as a whole. So do that kind of stuff. I even did it in winter. Every morning, when I waited until my metabolism was at its highest, when I felt the warmest, I would just take off my shoes and socks. I'd put on warm clothes, step outside, and just stand there for, even if it was 30 seconds. And I could definitely feel the benefits. Over time, I ended up going with a grounding bed panel. Because I have chemical sensitivity, I had to look very hard for one that worked for me. Dr. Laura Conover, again, she's not paying me, has one that's made out of hemp and then has steel, and kind of a very soft woven steel mesh that's sewn onto it, as well as steel frames into the hemp fabric. And you literally attach that to a grounding wire that goes into the grounding part of your outlet. And I find it helps. It just helps my body have the support it needs to heal. It's kind of in that natural state. Okay. All right. So those were some of my tips. I want to talk with you also about moving toward positive change, what we need to evolve industry and also government and sort of societal level decision making, because we don't really need to be living in this sort of cocktail of soup where it's buyer beware, and everybody has to invest in their own water filter, to help maintain the health of their body. And these are things that all of us, they touch upon all of us. This touches upon decisions we make in our everyday lives, decisions that we can make when we go out in our communities, when we go out to our workplaces. Number one is to move away from a fear-based mindset. People make a lot of decisions of what they're afraid might happen if they choose this or that. Instead, we need to be aware of what our fears are. We need to be able to mitigate the risk that our fears will come true. We need to get the information we need to reduce the risk of things happening. And we also need to take responsibility that maybe things will go wrong. That's just part of life, but we need to try something different. And that starts with fostering acceptance, curiosity, and creativity. Those are very important factors of just fostering that this is where we are, and we need change, and we need to be curious about how we can get there. We need to be curious about trying things. We need to be creative. We need to be playful. When you're looking at what am I going to use as a shampoo or a moisturizer, be playful with it. Don't think of it as like, oh my God, this is going to like ruin my face or my hair. Just be playful with it. Be accepting that there will be some things that, will not work out unless you find the person who's tried everything already and starts telling you what definitely works for them. But there will be some trial and error. That's part of life. But go back to how you were when you were a kid. Think about how children are and how they play and try things. We need that in order to really create a world and an economy and options for ourselves that are going to be more supportive of maintaining life, right? Life for us, life on this planet, and a lovely life at that. And we need a heart-based approach to decisions and policies. So a lot of us, we go into work situations and we don't feel good about a situation that's being made. And then we're told, well, we have to make that decision because we have to make money. And it's not like that. There are lots of ways to make money. There are always different alternatives and options. So we need to think about a heart-based approach to the decisions that we're making for ourselves, for other people, for our companies, and bring that to the table and not be ashamed about it, but see it as a strength, as something that's actually going to get us to make better decisions in this world. Okay, industry investment and solutions. I will just quickly say that companies, we're operating at this buy low, sell high, what's my return on investment thing. And that's a very sort of independent, isolationist view of how to organize things, when the reality is that we have a lot of entrepreneurs, we have a lot of good ideas out there, we have a lot of solutions out there, but they need support, they need financing, but they're not necessarily going to bring us a tenfold or 100-fold return on investment in sort of that economic terms, but they will lead to better solutions, they will lead to safer products, they will lead to a healthier and more high quality world if we invest in them. So we, as companies, if you're in that position, if you're a leader in a company or manager, understand that, you can't expect to treat sort of the solutions coming out of entrepreneurs or, the innovations coming out of innovation labs or something as something that's a huge return on investment. You need to invest in it. You need to invest in it by paying for the entrepreneurs, for sponsoring and scaling emerging innovations and into production. So it needs to be based on the need of your company, the need of the realities of our environment, of our environmental health, of the need of where we need to be as a society rather than return on investment, because ROI is not a measure of quality of life or health. But that's where we need to focus on, is quality of life and health, okay? I will also say that there's a lot of potential from our regulatory agencies to get support from them. So there's already a lot of people in regulatory agencies that have knowledge. Reach out to them, see what they suggest. If you're trying to look for, solutions or alternative ways of doing things, tap into those individuals, get to that individual staff member and seek their help. They will be thrilled. I mean, those people get into that line of business because they want to change the world, but they frequently don't have the opportunity to do that. So talk with them, and there's already programs to get the kind of assistance we need. If you're in the regulatory realm, we need that type of support. We need industry to get that type of support. Right now, what we have is that industry is doing a lot of paperwork, a lot of compliance work, a lot of busy work, but they're not spending the time and effort on coming up with better solutions. So we need that kind of support, and we need deadlines. We need some sort of commitment that we're going to get things done in a certain amount of time, because the solutions are there. They're already out there. They just haven't been invested in, and they haven't been implemented and executed upon. And that's the same goes for individuals. You need to invest in that time to find that alternative, find that way that's going to work for you, whatever your criteria are. It's going to be within your budget. It's going to be within your timeline. It's going to be within what you're looking for. But you need to make that investment, and you need to look around and ask people. There's lots of resources out there. I mean, so many resources on the internet. It's amazing, as well as just individuals who have done things and figured stuff out. Okay, the last thing I just want to mention is that we need an update to our antitrust laws. So I actually started out as I started out my professional career as a corporate attorney working for large companies, some of which are now subject to, are basically being asked to do some of the cleanup work on some of these toxic chemicals. I was not working in the chemical realm. Then I was working on antitrust, which is all about market power and pricing and things like that. But, I moved away from that area and got into chemicals and human health and things like that. But I've come full circle, because what's going on is that these companies are leveraging market power to continue to do the status quo, to continue to put out products that are toxic to us, and to continue to pollute our world. Because they're holding on, right? They're holding on to what they know, to the status quo. There's a lot of collusion and corruption going on with government. They're unfortunately working with even nonprofits in order to look like what they're doing, to make it look like what they're doing is in our best interest, that it's sustainable. So there's a lot of problems going on. Once you start scratching the surface, you start to see those problems. There's a lot of people reporting on this. Thankfully, we have a lot of investigative reporters and think tanks and others working on this, and then people who write books like me and many other people that you're going to hear from at this conference. But we need to nip that in the bud. We need to understand that there's a huge connection between companies leveraging market power to do things that undermine our health and undermine our environment. Intellectual property laws are ripe for abuse. So all of these things need to be looked at. So if you are anyway involved in this professionally or in sort of broader community of this world, just flag that, and you might want to look into that, and you can definitely learn more about it in my book, Silent Winter. There's the book, here it is again. It's a pretty short read, very, very easy to read. I'm not a scientist, but I worked in a very technical field, so I wrote this with you and me in mind. And I try to give you a very comprehensive picture of what's going on and why, and what the problems are. And hopefully today I've given you some solutions about what you can do about it as well. Look me up at either joannamoore.com or sensitivecanary.com. Okay, I feel like I'm very close to, a stopping point. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Let's see here.
Joanna, are you completely done, or did you have more?
I am done with the presentation. I'm happy. I can certainly say more or answer questions. Either one.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt. I know that you were going to stop your screen share, but if you've got time for questions, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much. That was amazing, really, and just so meaningful to so many of us and to all of us, really. So, and thanks for sharing, your book info and so on. I just want to make sure our entire audience knows exactly how we go about our Q&A here. And so many of them do, but for those of you that don't, we normally don't take questions directly from the chat box. We ask you to actually raise your virtual hand. And in case you don't know how to do that, what we have you do is you look at your different Zoom controls and the different tabs. One of those tabs is called your Reactions tab. Click on your Reactions tab, and then you'll see a bunch of emojis pop up, and one of them says raise hand. You'll click on that function. We will see your hand raised, and from there we move right ahead and we're able to call you by your first name and unmute you, and you'll be able to come in with your question for Joanna. And so while we look to see if any hands come in, I know I've got a couple of questions. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to jump right in.
Yeah.
Let's see now. And actually, where did they go? Here they are. So, and it's not that you haven't touched on this, but I just have a bunch of questions about Silent Winter. And if you could just tell us briefly about the chapter called Our Current Trajectory, and maybe just give us maybe something else that you might not have touched on during the presentation.
Sure thing. Yeah. So that's one of the opening chapters of my book. And I wanted to impress upon people. So I actually had gone to graduate school for environmental planning and design. And, you go to a degree like that and you find out about sort of, in environmental pollution and degradation. And it's something that I think all of us are becoming more familiar with. But we don't realize that same sort of undermining is happening now in our body. And it's happening from these chemicals. And there's this really weird economic dynamic that's happening, is that the companies that are producing the chemicals that are undermining our bodies are frequently the same companies that produce the pharmaceuticals to come up with to take away the pain or to deal with the problems that we're having. So we have this weird economic dynamic where we're kind of being almost, I call it being colonized in some sense, that we're being undermined. Our natural resources in the body that keep us just naturally healthy and whole and functioning are no longer working because of these toxic chemicals. And the trajectory is that we're going to become more and more dependent on pharmaceuticals from the same companies making the toxic chemicals that are undermining our health. So that's a short nugget, but I go a little bit into, have some fun with it and go into detail about that.
So incredibly diplomatic of you to use the word weird. I might go so far as to say sinister, but what do I know?
It's unfortunate. It is unfortunate, but we can change that trajectory any moment. And yeah, we can change all that, but we need to be aware that this is sort of, if you just took where we are now and where we're going to its logical conclusion, that's where we're going. So we need something different.
Thank you for that. I do see a hand raised from Sharon. So Sharon, I will unmute you. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Sharon. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm very interested in what causes Parkinson's disease and what to do about Parkinson's disease. If you could enlighten me on that, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I can talk about the chemical aspect of it. So, I mentioned a little bit at the beginning the term neurotoxins. There are a lot of chemicals that are toxic to the nervous system, and this is everything from the way the brain functions to the nerves to the way the nerves power the muscles and whether the muscles are when they're moving and how they're moving. So there's an impact or degeneration on that system with Parkinson's, and it's something that can be undermined both with sort of ongoing acute exposures where you're getting exposed to chemicals that are undermining that nervous system, but also with chemicals that are in the body, they're long-lived, and they're just lodged in there, and they continue to interfere with the proper functioning of the nervous system. So for anybody who has any symptoms of Parkinson's or anything similar or has been diagnosed with the disease, I would say it is worth your while to reduce your exposure to chemicals and worth your while to do things to support your body's elimination of them. Pesticides, all forms, from the disinfectants to the insecticides, all of that are known. Those are the biggest category of neurotoxins there are. Fragrance products also are known to contain neurotoxins. So those are two huge categories of things I would really stay away from. And especially in food, but everything around you, everything you put in, on, and around your body. Does that help answer your question, Sharon?
It does.
Great. Thanks for the question, Sharon. And again, Joanna, thank you very, very much. I mean, really meaningful to so many folks out there. Let's go now to Mike. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, hi. A question I'm trying to help with somebody is I've understood they've got a ruptured silicone breast implant, and I've heard that it's migrated to the lymph nodes. I've not heard the person talk about ways they're planning to eliminate the silicone that's maybe migrated.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice that I can give them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so anything, implants are generally a huge issue, regardless of what they're made of, and especially, when there's a rupture there, because the body just doesn't recognize that stuff as natural, right? So it's going to start trying to eliminate that. It might have an autoimmune response and things like that. I would definitely have the same recommendations that I gave in this presentation about the zeolite, about the vitamins, the minerals, the diet, and things like that. I would definitely have that person do all these things. And I probably would have them look around if there's anybody who specifically specializes in that type of detox. I don't have, there are research studies out there, for example, with zeolite, of what types of substances it prioritizes and in what order it wants to grab things and get them out of the body. But I don't have any recollection about, how effective it might be for this type of problem. But in reducing any other type of toxins and any other type of toxic chemicals that your friend has to deal with, it's going to strengthen her body's immune system and ability to deal with this. But I would say she might want to look around for somebody who's helped people who have had a similar issue as well. But anything that's going to help her detox and strengthen her body on this front is going to be helpful.
Thanks very much. And thanks to you as well, Mike. And let's now go to Marlene. Welcome, Marlene.
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation very much. I just had a question. I eat a lot of red beans by Goya, and they have this ingredient, and I've not been able to find very much about it. It's called calcium disodium EDTA, and it says it's for color retention, but I don't know what this is. I don't know whether it's harmful, and it's hard to find a red bean without it in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it would be better if you could find something without it. I'd say anything, especially if you're eating this kind of regularly, that's a synthetic chemical preservative at that, is going to, is putting a burden on your body. I mean, that's as much as I can say. And especially if you're having any health challenges, I'd say definitely super would be worth it. And if something you're eating regularly, definitely would super be worth it to find something else. Maybe there's a slightly different, you said it was like you're eating it's a red bean?
Yes, it's a particular brand. I don't know if I should say the brand of red bean. I can buy the dry beans that aren't in the can, but they are in the canned beans specifically.
Well, one thing I can, one tip I can give you that is less known is for beans. When you cook beans, if you put like half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of baking soda while you're cooking them, and do not add any salt or anything acidic, but just that baking soda in the water, it helps them soften a lot more, because I know people have a hard time with dry beans in that they kind of are hard to get soft and difficult to digest. But that is one that people in the Middle East use that to soften beans, like when they make hummus, for example. So you might want to try that also. You're soaking them overnight beforehand, but using that baking soda might help. You can then add apple cider vinegar, or if you just want to offset that sort of that baking soda alkaline thing going on. But you might also just explore different other beans. I mean, maybe this is the time for you to look at something else if that's just not working for you.
Thanks very much for that, Joanna. And now we have Kaylee. Welcome, Kaylee.
Thank you. Hi, Joanna. Thank you so much for caring so much and sharing so much about so many things and to so many people. You're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylee.
I have a question regarding filtration of water. What I've been doing is I've been using first the Brita filter and then pouring the Brita filtered water into the zero water and using that for cooking and drinking. And I wanted to know whether that takes out the PFAS that you were speaking about, because I don't know anything about that.
What you said you were doing zero water? I've never heard of that. You're gonna have to tell us about that.
Oh, well, Bed Bath & Beyond has both the Brita filter and the zero filtered water. That's the name of the brand. And they include a little device to measure the pollutants in the water, but I'm not sure which the chemicals are that they take out. But when I put it through first Brita, then that takes out some of it. And I measure it. I measure it before I put it in and after I put it through the filter. And then I measure it again, the same water before it goes into the zero pitcher, and then after. And after it's always zero, but before, from the sink, it's like 6 or 7, and then it goes down to 4. When I filtered it through the Brita, it still has 4, but the same water after it comes out from the zero filter, it is 0.
Okay. So when you're saying these numbers 640, these are probably a finite set of chemicals that this tool is measuring for you.
Yeah.
You know, the filters that are sort of high advanced filters will filter out hundreds and hundreds of chemicals that unfortunately tend to be in the water. I don't know for certain, you know, about Brita. I sort of looked for a brand that was going to work for me, and I looked for whether they had an independent lab report of what chemicals are being filtered into what amount. And I was sort of happy with the amounts that they, you know, the chemicals they filtered out, and they were filtering out PFAS. I do know that a lot of filters, conventional filters, do not filter out PFAS. You need to have certain things in the filter in order to filter out PFAS. So unfortunately, I'm sorry, I cannot answer your question any more than that, but you might want to start with the Brita website or the Zero Water website and see what they have to say, what kind of independent testing results they're offering there.
That's good advice. Thank you for that, Joanna. And so at this point, I don't have any more hands. I've got more questions myself, but just want to remind our audience again, a great opportunity to have an intimate Q&A session here with Joanna. And I see some more hands. That's great. And everybody, again, you can click on your reactions tab and click on raise hand, and we'll have you here with your question as well. And so let's go to George. George, welcome.
Yes, can you hear me?
Hi, George. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for devoting your life to this courageous topic. I know that as an attorney, you must receive a lot of pushback from industry for what you're doing. Can you give us the name of the air filter that works for you, as well as the water filter that you use?
Yeah, let's see if I can remember them all. So we live in wildfire country, and which in August, September, we have just terrible air quality. I mean, we have to sort of pretty much tape ourselves in the house. So we have 3 filters. There are actually 3 different filters. And I feel like I might not be able to, they all have kind of these names that are so nondescript. One is, I know, IQ Air. There's another one that's out of Switzerland that filters out, has these chemical canisters that filters out chemicals. My husband chose one that was particular for fire as well. So we have very different air filters kind of for different purposes in our house. Yeah, so we definitely searched around a little bit and got things that were a little bit more expensive. And I'm sorry that I don't have all of the names of them, but there are a number of really good products out in the market, but it's worthwhile taking the time to look around. On the water, I actually ended up looking through, because I was getting the grounding mat from Dr. Laura Conover, Intuition Physician, that's her website. She posted that she started selling a water filter, which is, she's not making it. She sort of curated one from what's available. And it's a company that recently changed its name, but it's been around a few decades. And they just, they've sort of figured it out. So I just went to her website. That's where I started. But then I went to looked at their independent testing results and looked around a little bit more and decided that that was going to work for me. So people use, somebody posted in the chat. I think I am going to look at the chat because people are giving some comments there. So somebody posted about reverse osmosis. I've heard that there's a little bit of issues with when you do reverse osmosis and things like that, is that you literally don't have any more minerals in the water. And somehow that's hard on your body. There's theories about this. But if you are super filtering out your water, it might be worthwhile to buy a glass bottle of trace minerals or something like that, or magnesium, and just put a drop in. You don't even have to put the whole dose they recommend, but just put a drop in to remineralize your water. Supposedly the filter that I'm getting that's through Laura Conover, Dr. Laura Conover, is able to leave minerals in the water, which is something I've never really heard of. So I'm still skeptical, but I'll see, I'll see how that works. I think with everything, people make claims and it's still a buyer beware world. But I am so far I've been using other filters and putting a little bit of minerals in the water because I'm guessing that it filters everything out. Okay. I'm just going to stop. I just wanted to look at what people are writing, if there's any other comments here. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, very good point. I think there was somebody asking about aluminum and, even aluminum cans and beans and sodas, is that you are getting aluminum because it's in an aluminum container. You are going to get trace amounts of aluminum every time you drink a soda or eat something out of a can. So another reason to go with glass or go with bulk products as well. Let's see, somebody asked about what's good for cleaning your teeth. Again, you can use just a pinch of baking soda with water. You can add just a little bit of activated charcoal. Some people just use or herbs, a little bit of ginger. There's a lot of very good natural toothpaste out there. There's now powders, tooth powders, and things like that. So there's a lot of options out there. Sometimes people do the teeth pulling stuff, which is swishing a combination of oil and water in there. Things that you can do to improve your teeth in general is chew on sage. That's been traditionally used for, any herb that sort of has that ability to take care of germs. You can chew that to help eliminate potential of gingivitis and things like that. So those are ways you can, stay away from some of those very conventional products. I would definitely say stay away from those very, very conventional products because they do tend to have chemicals in them that just aren't good for you.
Thank you very much for that, Joanna. Mike is back with a follow-up. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Joanna.
Hi.
A question more for myself this time. A great deal of sodas.
Mike, you're kind of breaking off a little bit, so you need to get a little bit closer to the mic and start over.
No, you're fine. Thank you very much. A question more for me this time. I used to drink a great deal of sodas in years past, and I'm concerned now. One of my favorites was Diet Mountain Dew, which I learned has a lot of bromide or whatever that exact element was. Mm-hmm. And the second question was about, you mentioned a little bit for teeth, but there's a gentleman that presented last week, and I think he's the only one that he talked quite forcefully about activated charcoal and consuming it. I've never really delved into that too much. It sounds a little bit sketchy to me. So can you maybe talk on those two topics?
Okay, so the first one, you did some research, and it sounds like you found that the sodas had a lot of bromine in them.
Yeah, that's the it's in primarily the clouded drinks like Fresca, Mountain Dew, things like that. Those cloudier ones. I think the bromide gave it that cloudy look. And again, I'm not completely sure on that, but I did hear there was a young teenager that was advocating a great deal about bromide being not in the food system. If you don't know anything on it, that's fine. I just wanted to maybe take advantage of your knowledge. Yeah, well, it's definitely it's that whole class of chemicals of this bromine, bromide, all kind of related. They're problematic, and they're base
sort of a base bone for a lot of other problematic substances out there in the world. You know, it's good that you stopped drinking that stuff. You know, generally, I think sodas also are not very good for your teeth for a variety of reasons. So it's a good thing that you did that. Your body probably right away started to detox anything that might have sort of, you know, lingered or accumulated or caused problems. Your body started to deal with that. I'd say just keep, you know, doing healthy things. The recommendations I gave today in terms of what you can do to detox, in terms of just reducing exposure, in terms of taking supplements, in terms of, you know, trying the zeolite clays, all of that is going to help with any chemical. All of that is just going to help your body get rid of that stuff and start over. So, you know, just don't worry about that too much. Just congratulate yourself for knowing that, you know, it's something to let go of and move on to something simpler and cleaner. In terms of the activated charcoal, so there are sort of different types of substances that can be used for detox. The activated carbon and activated charcoal, the activated charcoal, some people claim is a little bit different than the activated carbon. But both of them, I think you just have to be careful about whether they're not absorbing too much, because they can absorb nutrients as well. And so it's, you know, with some of those things, it's better to do in a pinch. And what I'm talking about is if you're going to take like a teaspoon or tablespoon for your intestines. I mean, these are products that you can use when you have food poisoning. You can take that if you think you have some chemicals in your intestines that may have either left your liver and gone in there, or because of something you ate. You can take that stuff. It's no problem. Some people notice that, you know, they might feel a little bit more anemic, or that it's leached nutrients from their system. I hear that there are people who take the activated charcoal, which is a little bit different than the activated carbon, and don't have that many problems with it, or they supplement with vitamins. So it's a little bit, I think it's going to be up to the individual to decide, you know, how well you're doing. So I would watch for that. I think in terms of, you know, brushing your teeth with it or something, you're not going to take in enough to, you know, make to sort of absorb too much. There are a lot of clays out there as well that are absorbent. Fiber is very absorbent in terms of soaking up toxins. Some of the clays, including zeolite, are known to also drop positive things into your body. So it might pick up a bunch of things that are negative, have an adverse effect on your body, but might drop magnesium or calcium. So that would be a positive. But the stuff that tends to be carbonated, the black stuff, tends to just absorb everything indiscriminately. If that helps, Mike?
We dropped Mike's hand, but yeah, it was very helpful for all of us. So thank you very much. And now we're gonna go over to Ruth. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, my question was also regarding the activated charcoal. I have black powdered charcoal, and I have activated charcoal in capsules that are white. And the instructions on the bottle says to take 2 tablets each day, like each meal, or 2 tablets 3 times a day.
So I can tell you again that you go ahead, Ruth. I didn't realize you were still speaking.
No, I had my mercury fillings taken out many years ago, and you know, and I don't know if I don't know if some of that mercury went through the body. I'm having a problem right now with with my feet, with one toe in particular. I don't know if it's long COVID, but I've had it for about 2 years now, and I've been to different doctors. They can't seem to find anything wrong with it. They don't know what's wrong with it, but I'm just wondering if there's anything in my body that you know would
that is sort of trapped. So I'm trying this because I've been hearing, different people talk about it. So anyway, I just wonder, maybe I've been doing this for a few days, taking the activated charcoal. I'm wondering if I should stop now. It's just basically a preventive,
And how do you feel on it? May I just ask?
I don't know. I'm taking so many things. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to be bothering me, but the toe is still, very painful.
Yeah.
And the foot altogether.
Yeah.
So, it
I,
doesn't. Yeah. Go ahead.
I can only speak on like personal experiences and then what I've heard. Again, the dark charcoal tends to just absorb everything indiscriminately. So if you take a lot of that, you might find you're not getting enough nutrients from your food. That activated charcoal and the white pills, it sounds like what I went through this whole process and now found a specialist who's extremely expensive, but extremely helpful. She sends me a lot of information, and she did send me some information about that type of product and said that the feedback from her other patients is that it's helpful for them. But again, I think it's going to be different from everybody. I found if I have something going on, like when I had inflammation in the joint, spraying the zeolite directly or soaking in zeolite or in a bentonite clay or any type of clays was helpful, as well as Epsom salts, which is magnesium. So you might want to try directly taking your toe and soaking it. I also had long-term COVID symptoms, and I found I got benefit from doing the recommendations that I gave, including the zeolite. But I understand that, it's both, you sort of have to, you are, unfortunately, you're going to be in a position where you just have to try and see how you feel. But all I can say is things that help me.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for that, Joanna. And let's go back to Kaylee has another follow-up. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Two questions, actually. One has been for you. Will the information that is gleaned from all this be included in the replays? Because there's so many Q&A answers from all these wonderful people that have such valuable information. So if you don't know, anyway, my vote is please do include it. and Joanna, do you have any idea why glass has been dropped from our recycling list? Metals and plastic still can be recycled, but here in Nassau County, Long Island, they've dropped the recycling of glass, and I want to know why. Do you have any idea? Idea?
I'm sorry to hear that, Kaylee. I'm on the very other side of the coast, and I have no idea. And I have no idea why glass would have been dropped from the recycling list. But if you have, one thing that I just will put a plug in is that I do save glass containers and reuse them for my own concoctions. So, and I use them as storage for leftovers instead of plastic stuff. So that's all I can offer. But I'm really sorry to hear that for some reason they're not recycling glass right now.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I'm with her in that same county and see the same thing, and it's something awry there. And Mike has another follow-up. Welcome back, Mike.
Well, thank you very much. Question: since we were talking about some of the detox stuff and activated charcoal, what about some of the other things that we've learned in the past, some other conferences about chlorella, seaweed, and what was the other one? Blue green algae type of products that supposedly help get some of the heavy metals and other toxins. Are those effective in any way?
Yeah, those are all helpful. Yeah, I really wanted to highlight the zeolite because it is a very it safely encapsulates things and they help them travel out of your body safely without being reabsorbed. So that's why I highlighted that one, and I really wanted to highlight vitamins and minerals, but that can include stuff like algae, which in my view is a supplement, because those provide the building blocks to help your body detox. So yeah, all of those are great.
Thank you so much, Joanna. And actually that is all the time we have for Q&A. And I want to thank you deeply for a very thoughtful and thorough presentation, and of course being so gracious with our Q&A and all of our questions and answers, and really means a lot to us. And I know I'm not the only person that does want to thank you, however. So I'm going to have our tech team unmute our entire audience. What does everybody want to say to Joanna?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, Joanna.